We were not created to walk through life alone. Our spouses are often our first picture of community after the spiritual community we have with God. But broadening that community to our family and our friends can create deep wells of joy and experience. Join us this week as we talk about including our parents and our in-laws and on the need to find friendship and community around us. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Olive Shoots Family Podcast, where we talk about family and parenting, homesteading, and the things God is leading us towards. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brittany. We've been married for 3 years, have one little boy, and just got our first piece of land where we plan to build and start our homestead. We are passionate about the family unit and getting back to the basics of the way God created us to live. We have big dreams and are learning what it looks like to pursue those dreams while first trusting God's leading.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Brittany and I have both been really blessed to have great parents, and there's been multiple times in our marriage, especially when we were engaged and about to get married, where people would make all kind of jokes about in-laws and just the dynamics of relationships with parents and in-laws, and just how that would be difficult. And then even when we had Emerson and we were pregnant with him, that those jokes resurfaced of just like how to handle and deal with our parents and in-laws. And I think there's some truth to those things, that it can be difficult sometimes to include our parents and to include our in-laws in our family. Just like it says in Genesis, when a man marries his wife, that he leaves his father and mother, that there's this leave and cleave aspect to marriage. And yet, at the same time, there's still an inclusion of wanting our parents involved in our families. We want them to be a part of knowing our children. And so we think it is so important to include your parents and in-laws in your family and in your parenting.
Yeah, when we heard those jokes, we kind of were like, no, we don't want our family to be that way. And also just like one of those reminders of like, we don't want to repeat that kind of thing, of like just that negative, and not that it's kind of just a joke, but it does hold a lot of weight. And we want to encourage others as well, like younger couples, to include their parents and in-laws and not just look on this new stage as something that you should avoid, but something that you should want to embrace, even though it might be difficult at times. But our like major why is just that, I mean, multiple things, but we want our kids to know our parents and to have the opportunity to learn from them. And on the flip side of that, we also want our parents to get to experience the joy that our kids bring them. And so it's like both of those. And also, obviously, we want to continue to have a relationship with our parents. Mm-hmm. So it's more than just one thing. And then it's also, I think, been really cool for our relationship with our parents, because I didn't know your family before I met you, and you didn't know mine. Like, we didn't grow up together or anything. So we've also gotten to experience getting to know our parents, our in-laws, with our spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways, in a different, like even me seeing you interact with my parents has been really neat, and vice versa. Just of, I don't know, getting to know our in-laws, and our in-laws getting to know us, because they weren't on that fast track of getting to know us kind of like we were when we were dating and everything. So it's still a process of getting to know our in-laws.
Yeah. I think one major thing that I think is really beneficial from that is obviously Brittany and I learned so much from our parents. That's kind of one of the major things of parenting and of having parents. And so we learned so much from our parents growing up. And we want our kids to learn from them as well. This generational passing on of knowledge, of skills, of abilities, of faith, of seeking after Jesus, of heartache and struggle and difficulties, and those are things that we can tell them firsthand. We can tell them the story about how our parents went through this really hard thing in their life and they came out the other end because of God's goodness and his grace. Or they can hear it from grandma and grandpa, and they can hear it directly, and the weight of that story is not only conveyed through the narrative, through what actually happens in the storyline, but you hear it in their voice. You see it in what they do. And there's just a whole different dynamic that happens when your grandparents are teaching you and leading you and showing you different things, because it's you have the love of a mother or a father. You have the same love of someone from your family, but it's just such a different dynamic of that. It's so much more free in a lot of ways, because it's not mom and dad who is also disciplined, who's also telling me that I have to do this and that and this and that, and not in a bad way, but it's just a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that something we learned, like this was something we wanted from the beginning, and also from the beginning, it's taken extreme intentionality to make that happen. Like even when we were seeking job change, we've mentioned that several times. A couple years ago, it started a couple years ago. We had kind of like set a mental boundary-ish of like, we didn't really want to be 3 hours away from either of our parents, just because we wanted that ease of access, that easy weekend trip, that, and it's not like we would say we're never going to move further away than that from our parents if God calls us to do that. But for this time, we want our kids to know our parents, and we want our parents to know our kids, and we want to continue that relationship with our parents. So it was just all that being such a high priority very much meant that we wanted to be able to make those weekend trips and it not be a big, huge deal, and like to be able to spend a decent amount of time wouldn't be almost impossible to do. And that intentional, like, it's just a lot of intentionality, especially when you don't live in the same city, because it's so easy to just get in your routine. You get in your routine with community, with church, with sports, with whatever your kids are doing, or just raising your kids, that if you don't plan ahead, then you look at your calendar and everything's full, and you realize we're not going to see our parents till, the next holiday or whatever. And so just taking that, when we've lived a couple hours away from my parents for the first few years, and now it's the opposite. So both ways, it was like, I think once a month we would just try to see, either come down here, have them up, or now it's the other way around, or meet halfway. Like, it's just that intentionality of a month out, 2 months out, let's put it on the calendar so that we know that it's there and it doesn't get missed. And it's not like we plan it because we have to schedule it. It's we value that and we want it to happen, so we're going to take the intentionality of planning it and scheduling it so that it happens.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of focus and just extreme dedication and intentionality to make that happen. That, with our relationship, me and Britt's relationship, that a lot of the times how it works out is my mind is so focused on work during the day that when I come home, I'm either doing projects, we're doing something together, I'm tidying up or helping with dinner, or helping with Emerson while she's making dinner, or doing something. And then after dinner, I slip into, well, I want to be dad, I want to be husband. And I focus on those things in my mind, that if I don't intentionally interrupt the daily normal, the daily, just like repetitive things or tasks that I have to get done, or just like roles that I carry. If I don't interrupt that to think about, okay, well, what are we doing next week? What are our plans for the weekend? What's coming next? That even in our own home, I have to stop myself and think intentionally about what's coming next so that we can be prepared as a family. Just with us two and our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And involving our parents, both parents and in-laws, that just takes a step further of that. And Brittany is by far better than that than I am. And I think there's a partnership that goes on there that oftentimes she is the one who's coming to me and saying like, hey, it has been 3 weeks, or it has been a month and a half, or whatever it is, since we've seen your parents. We should schedule something, or we should have something to plan in the future. And it's not that I don't think about my parents, but it's that scheduling, that whole dynamic of our relationship. She's the one who handles most of the time. And so there's this partnership and this communication of like, she'll notice me wanting to see my parents, or like missing my family, or realizing that, they haven't had the chance to see Emerson in a few weeks. We need to foster that and make sure that happens. So she's really good at that, but it's really hard. And I have seen her manage that really well because she's a rock star and I love her very much and I'm very thankful for her. But it's also very difficult to do that as well. But it's so important.
And we've already seen like just the joy. We've experienced the joy, and we know that, and it brings us joy to see our parents so excited to see. I mean, if you have kids and you've noticed that your relationship with your parents is on a different level. Like obviously they're still always excited to see you, but they're way more excited to see their grandkids. And then they're like, oh, hi, after they've been playing with the kids for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, Emerson's parents.
Yeah. Or, oh, it's Emerson. And then they're like, oh, I haven't given you a hug yet. So it's like, obviously they still care about us, but we know that they just so look forward to seeing our kid and to seeing their grandkid, and just, remembering the like, oh, they look like you when you were little. Oh, and just like even that level of like reminding them of having kids again, but just getting to do all the fun stuff. And so knowing that they get a lot of joy from our kids, and also just knowing that we can't include them all the time, like we can't be with them as much as they would desire us to be with them. We've also just tried to think of other ways to be intentional throughout the day, or just throughout our weeks when there are those long breaks of getting to visit them in person. And one of the things that we started with our parents was like a group picture album for if you all have iPhones, or if you all have whatever. I guess you can do it on like Google or Amazon or stuff too. But make just an album, and right now it's just titled Emerson because he's the only one. But we just add pictures of him randomly throughout the day or throughout the week, not every single day, so that they're getting updates on just what he's doing and things as he's growing. And then we also, I don't know, like around the holidays usually is when I think of it, of like making, now that he's getting a little bit older, making art projects. We did an Easter cross picture and just made one for both of his grandparents as well. And that was just ways that they feel included even when they're not around.
Yeah, and I think just trying to make time for frequent like FaceTime calls or things like that, even just like random times throughout the day, or when Emerson is just playing and being silly, and or sometimes when like he mentions their name or something like that, Brittany will call them or FaceTime them, and just give them an opportunity to talk to him while he was like calling for them and wanting to hear from them. Or just even like scheduling to meet, especially with my parents living 3 hours away, scheduling to meet them for dinner halfway and just trying to find those ways that it's doable on both of our ends to just meet up for the night.
Yeah. And I think like as Emerson he's getting close to 1.5, so he's obviously starting to try to say their names, or he knows their names. And it's just been cool that even though we don't see, like whenever we were up there, even though we didn't see my parents all the time, and now even though we don't see Nathan's parents, every single week, he definitely recognizes their names and recognizes their faces and knows they're his grandparent. He knows they're special. They're not just, any of our friends, even though he sees them on a regular basis, he's kind of a little hesitant at first, but it's just cool, and we want to foster that. We want him to, even now at a young age, know that they're not just another set of friends, or they're not just people. They're more family, and it's just been neat that he is already recognizing that, even though he doesn't see them all the time.
And I think that's important. One of the things that we want to do is just, it's not only just like we value family and we want this, or we want it a certain way, or we have a picture of what it looks like or anything like that, but we want to develop this culture within our family, our little family, that our family is important. And this is something that we want to pass on to our kids, that they grasp, that they learn is a part of who we are in our family. And we have to be intentional to make that happen. And I think one of the things that we think about a lot of the times in talking about parents and in-laws, especially when kids get brought into the mix, and just thinking about like newborns and all the rules, or all the desires we have for our newborn babies, of how we want them to be held or touched, or cared for, or not feeding them this, or not doing this with them, and all the different things that come with how we want to raise our kiddos. That setting boundaries is important. It's important to communicate those things. It's important to communicate how you want your kids raised, what boundaries exist, what you want parents and in-laws to do, what you don't want them to do. Like, all of that is good. But I think we want to encourage everyone just to establish those boundaries through the lens that you're creating a culture of valuing family interaction with your children. And when that's the lens, when that's the glasses that we wear in setting up these boundaries, it doesn't mean that we nix everything, we nix every rule, but it's that our rules that we do enact are more purposeful, and they also carry more grace with them, because the end goal is interaction between our family and our parents and our kids. And that's what we're desiring, not necessarily just following the letter of the law.
Yeah, and I would say, Nathan started off by saying we both have been blessed to have great parents, and they kind of had already set this tone in some way or another prior. Like, we remember interactions with our grandparents, and just those weeks that we would look forward, or the weekends we would look forward to seeing them. And so it wasn't like we were starting from scratch necessarily. And I know that's not the case for everybody. Sometimes maybe you didn't have that relationship, or maybe your parents aren't somebody you desire your kids to be around on a regular basis. Like, I get that perspective too. And we haven't dealt with either of those things, but even so, it hasn't always been easy to include them and like around holidays when it gets stressful, or not even just include them, but to hold it to the value that we want to hold it to. And I just know that it's taken a lot of communication and a lot of, not like we said, it's never been we don't want to see them. It's just, honestly, even especially around the holidays, with if we were just trying to do the easiest thing possible for our own family, it would be to do Christmas with us and not have the stress of trying to do it with 3 other. But obviously we don't really want that deep down, and we don't want that for our kids either. So it's not always the easiest thing to include our parents, even when they might not, even when it might be something we completely desire. It still can be difficult at times, and difficult to have those conversations with boundaries whenever something does maybe get crossed, or to say it in a way, because they are our parents, so we're never wanting to be disrespectful or rude, but just to present those boundaries in a way, like he said, that's in love, and it's also creating that culture. And one of the things to also think about in all of this is that regardless of how your parents are and how difficult it is to make it something you value, and something you value might not be every month. It might just be, we're going to make it a point to see our parents a couple times we're going to make sure that we're seeing them and that our kids are seeing them. Just remembering that tone that we set now for our kids is going to impact the tone that they choose to set when it's our grandkids we're talking about. Like the way that we include our parents now is going to impact the way our kids include us later. And just remembering that even in those hard times, that we want this to be a generational thing, and we want it to be a healthy thing and a fun thing, and to not let the stress of it all get in the way of just that long-term goal that we have both now. I mean, I guess it's a short-term goal and a long-term goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I would just end with just recognizing that as parents, we love our children so much. And just thinking back, if you're a longtime parent, whether you're a longtime parent or you're just new to the game, that thinking back on those first moments of holding your little baby and just experiencing the joy that God was giving you through this new little life, that same joy that your kid brings to you, I am sure your child is wonderful, but that joy comes from the Lord. It ultimately comes from the Lord. And there are moments that I'm sure when Emerson is running up to me and giving me a big hug, that joy is partly from him doing that, but it's because the Lord was gracious enough to give him to me in the first place. And it's because the Lord is gracious enough to create this moment where my son is running to me. In all these different moments of our lives, we recognize that God's goodness and who he was and his faithfulness to us, to give us these children in our lives that reflect the joy of knowing the Lord. And if that's true, then that is God working through the lives of our children to reveal his character and his nature. And we shouldn't keep that to ourselves. That even as little children who maybe have not come to know salvation, they may not have come to trust in Jesus as their Lord and Savior, that God is still working through them to share his goodness and his joy and his love to the people around them. And so even if the relationship with your parents is rocky, or there are things you wish were different, that allowing your children to be a part of their lives, and I get it, do that in a healthy way, do that in a way that the boundaries fit your expectation of what you want that to look like. I get all that. But allowing your children to be involved in their lives is allowing God to work through your children, even at the youngest age, before they can even say Jesus. Jesus can be working through them. And I think that's a pretty powerful image and a pretty powerful thought when we think about including our parents and including our in-laws into our little families.
Yeah. Is your baby or toddler teething? I'm always looking for natural products to give my baby instead of over-the-counter medicines that often contain artificial colors, flavors, added sweeteners, and other non-essential ingredients. Earthley's Teeth Tamer has been great. It's made from whole cloves and catnip, which works to reduce pain and swelling and provides a feeling of calmness and relaxation. My baby loves the taste of it, and I can tell it gives him relief. That's a win-win in my book. It's even effective for adults. It can help with pain from cavities, root canals, wisdom teeth removal, braces, and more. It's non-GMO, made in the USA, and made with 100% organic ingredients. If you're interested in Teeth Tamer, click the link in the show notes and check out the other amazing Earthly Wellness products while you're at it. Yeah, so we're just going to transition from there to kind of talking about just the need for community and friendship in our own personal lives, and just how, I don't know, have mentioned this, I know, also in several different podcasts, just how thankful we are for our community, but it's also been a journey to get to where we're at, and also a journey to realizing the importance of it. I think, like, just thinking back to even while we were dating, it was definitely something we both desired. We both desired that community, that close Christian community and friendship. And I think we were both seeking that out. You were in a small group when we met, and I had been helping with youth at the time, so I was also, like, just desiring that my age community group, but I don't think I was actually plugged in one at the time. But it was both something, like, we knew was important, we valued it, we knew that we didn't just need each other, especially throughout dating, but even, like, after we were married, we didn't want to be just in our house and doing our own stuff all the time. But it was something that's definitely extra difficult, and I think for our personality types, even more so difficult, to get out and force ourselves to find that community, because on any given night we would much rather eat dinner and sit on the couch and read or watch something and go to bed than to think about getting out of the house or think about work being over and doing something else, because we were just kind of both homebodies and not super extroverted personalities.
Yeah, and so just like in our conversation about including our parents, like, it takes intentionality to have those friends and that community. Like, it doesn't just happen, or I guess it could just happen, but most often than not, it's probably not going to just happen. And so we kind of had to force ourselves and put ourselves in the position to have the community that we found. And I remember, and I think we've talked about this at one point, but just remember that first week or two of going to a new community group. Like, it was really difficult for us, and at one point we were on our way there and got into an argument and a fight on the way there, and we're like, oh, should we even go tonight? We're frustrated with each other. Is this even what we should be doing right now? And we just paused for a little while, and we're like, no, we both agree that finding community is something that we have to do. And it's not going to come at a convenient time. It's not going to just be something that's easy to pick up and just falls in our lap, but it's going to take work. And especially if the enemy knows that we are much better targets when we're by ourselves, that he's gonna be trying to be at work and preventing that as well. So just knowing that community, it takes effort and it takes work to build, to grow, to find, all the above, and it doesn't just fall into our laps.
Yeah, I also remember even before this group, when we lived up in Northwest Arkansas, we were trying to. We didn't really have a group that we could join within our church because our church didn't really have small groups at the time. I mean, I guess they did, but it was very few, and they didn't fit our time schedule. And so we were like, if we want this, then maybe we just need to start one. And so we had pushed ourselves to start our own little group and attempt to invite people. And I think it took. I mean, I guess we also didn't really have anybody to invite, but we were like, we want this and we want to invite people. And so we felt led to do it. And so we just kind of started a group, and we did gain some community through that. It was still a little difficult just because we were all at different churches. So it wasn't like that. I think we definitely developed friendships, and it was deep relationships, but I think there's something extra whenever you're also going to Sunday church and then you're meeting throughout the week and then you're seeing them. So we're like built in seeing them more than just once a week or once every other week whenever you're meeting. But I think that, like, if you're in a place where you say, well, there's nowhere for me to go, there's no community groups at my church, there's no small groups at my church, then like maybe that's your sign to start one and invite people over. And it literally can start with, hey, I know a couple of friends, let's have dinner. Like, just invite them over for dinner, or invite them to dinner if you don't want to invite them to your house. But I do think there's something extra personal about it being at your home, inviting them into your life, whether it's just for dinner or a game night. Mm-hmm. And it can start there and end in a prayer night, praying for each other, and it doesn't even have to be we're going to open up the Bible on the first week. Like, it can be just starting that community, getting to know each other and praying for each other.
Yeah. And it's so important to realize that community is what we are created for. We were meant to live in community with each other. And so if you don't have that, as difficult as it is to foster and create and grow, that it is so important to do so, because that's what we were made to do. And it has to extend past our spouse and our kids. That, your relationship with your spouse, they're your best friend. You do life with them. They're your teammate. And that's great. But as much as I love Brittany, and I love her very much, she's not going to understand everything that's going on in my mind as a male. And I'm very, very thankful for that, because those differences are healthy, and they help balance each other out, and they help us to see different perspectives.
I don't think either of us wants to know what's going on in the other's brain all the time.
Likewise, yeah. But I need those close friendships with other men who understand the difficulties of being a man, who understand what I'm feeling when I'm struggling with being a leader of the household, when I'm struggling with knowing how to love my wife and support her in pregnancy and labor and delivery, when she can't help me through that because she's experiencing it in a completely different way, in a completely unique way that I will never understand. And so she needs friends that are going to help her and support her through that in ways that they can actually support her. And there's so much that we just need close friends, male and female, that are going to walk with us in the ways that we need to hear, in an accountability, in a support, in an encouragement, and in a prayerful way.
Yeah, so I think that can look like, where we're at right now, we have our community circle group that we go to is couples, and we're honestly all in a very similar stage of life right now, which is a blessing. But I know there's also circles that it extends through all different age stages of life, and that's also really a blessing, and just learn the younger ones learning from the older ones and vice versa. But we have also formed that individual community inside of our bigger community. So like Nathan will have closer relationships with the guys. It's not like we're all just couples circle, and I have that relationship with some of the girls, so we know, like he said, we can rely on them. But I think that can also look like maybe you just have a group of girls and it's not part of your couple circle group that you turn to whenever you're going through something that are going to pray for you and point you back to Jesus. It doesn't have to be that they're all intertwined, but I think it's just important, period, to have that community that you, like I just said, know that they're going to point you back to Jesus whenever they actually can understand a little bit more than maybe what in the time my husband can understand from my emotions or my feelings, because maybe they actually have been there, and Nathan probably hasn't in some ways.
I definitely haven't.
Yeah.
I also think having those male and female specific friendships, like one of the things about church and about Christian groups that we don't think about very often is like church and following Jesus. When he was with his 12 disciples, like I'm sure they talked theology and they read the Bible and they prayed and they listened to Jesus and they encouraged one another and they supported one another and they helped each other carry each other's burdens, and they did all the things that we are talking about with our friends. But I think Jesus was funny. I think the disciples had fun with each other. I think they played games together and blew off steam together. I think one of the things we often forget about when in doing life with other people is that there's enjoyment in being in community, and there is fun, and there is laughter, and there is joy in being with other people. And a lot of the times, community involves praying for each other, reading the Bible, talking about Jesus, supporting each other, encouraging each other. But sometimes it just looks like going out and camping on a mountain with a bunch of guys and spending the weekend with them because we want to go do something fun together that builds community. Mm-hmm. And that is also what we were designed to do. And that's also an important aspect of Christian community, is just that Christian community is not just the stuffy room, like dead air room of like, wah, 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 like we're just blabbing on over and over again. Okay, we're together, so let's open the Bible. That's a good thing. It's a good thing to read Scripture, and I think we believe it is so important to turn to Scripture, and that is an essential part of Christian community. But it's not just that. Yeah.
Having fun together. And I think that there can be times you hang out with community where you're literally just having fun, like you said, like going hiking, or for us, like we just get coffee, and I have like with some of the girls in our community group, we'll get coffee together once a month, and sometimes we talk about Bible stuff, but most of the time we're just having conversation and catching up on life, and that in turn also leads to, now I know how to pray for her throughout the week because we just talked about our week, and so it can still lead to like, Christian things and prayer. Like we want to still support each other. It's not like we just hang out just to hang out and we don't care about each other, but developing that relationship of just having fun together, I think increases our care for each other, and also that like desire to support each other.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think it is just scripture. Community is just reading the Bible. Like those other things are very, very important, of just hanging out together, doing life. But at the same time, when we engage in reading the scriptures together in community, that we have a better understanding of what those scriptures mean, that we were designed to read scripture in community with each other. And I think one reason for that is just we have different perspectives, that even as Brittany and I read a passage together, or as we're going through our reading plan for the day and we get done and we're like, what in the world did we just read? And why is it, why did they do that?
True story actually happened this week.
Yeah. There was Judges is pretty wild, so don't read that unless you're ready for it.
Well, I didn't intentionally.
or read it if you're not
honestly,
ready for it.
The issue was the plan split 2 chapters, and if I would have read both chapters on the same day, it would have made a lot more sense, but I didn't. And so I literally got to the end and I went to Nathan and I was like, what in the world did I just read?
Yeah, it was a fun conversation. But in reading those passages, she will have a different perspective of what's going on than I will. And I think that's okay. I think that's good. And so being able to share those different perspectives and understanding of what different Bible passages mean, even because maybe we've studied it on different levels. Like in the passage she was talking about, she came to me and was like, what in the world does this mean? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a reflection of another passage that we've already read. And it's tying together and showing that Israel is very disobedient, even to the point of the worst of the worst. Israel is now doing that itself. And so it was just because I had already kind of looked at that before. And so even though I didn't have my own unique perspective, like I didn't read that and had a revelation of what it meant, because I just had an original understanding, I was like, oh yeah, this is, and we could share that. And we pointed to what the text meant. And so we're all going to have different understandings. We're all going to have different perspectives. So just sharing those helps us to get to the truth of the passage. And I picture that with Jesus, that he would often ask the disciples questions about theology, and he didn't ask them a question and then immediately give them the answer of what it was, but he would let it ruminate. He would let them process together. And as Jesus asked a question, John would answer, and then Peter would chime in, and then the other disciples would begin talking and processing. What did Jesus mean? Why is he asking us this question? And they would try to figure it out themselves before Jesus would give them an answer, before he would reveal the truth. And maybe that wasn't always giving them an answer, but he would just give them a truth or a reality of what they were seeking after. And so I think even Jesus recognized that there is value in processing the word, processing the teachings of Jesus, of scripture, of the biblical story with others around us, because it helps us understand what Jesus is trying to say to us and what Jesus is trying to lead us to. Have your allergies been acting up? Every year when the seasons change from winter to spring and from summer to fall, my allergies start bothering me. Earthley's Sinus Saver is an herbal tincture that provides natural support during allergy season. It works best when taken consistently and helps to give you relief from sneezes, sniffles, sinus pressure, watery eyes, and all those other annoying allergy symptoms. Sinus Saver uses the power of herbs to help clear the body of excess histamines and calm allergic reactions. My family is thankful for this product, knowing we are fueling our bodies with natural things to help us feel better versus the typical over-the-counter medicines that oftentimes have other side effects. I also love that it's safe for our little one. If you're interested in Earthley Sinus Saver or any of their other products, click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, and I also think another like huge benefit of community, and something we've definitely already experienced, is just that support structure in raising our kids. And we haven't experienced that on an extreme level yet because we have a 1-year-old and they all have less than 1-year-olds for the most part. A couple of them have older kids, but it's just neat to have that. I mean, we often are like bouncing just newborn questions off each other, or sleep training questions off each other, or my kid's sick, just like random stuff like that. And also already having those deeper parenting conversations of like when our kids are older, when we like Nathan talking with how we're gonna raise our boys to be men, and from my perspective, like how we raise our sons as stay-at-home moms, like just having that, or our kids as stay-at-home moms, period. Just having that support structure of bouncing ideas and tips just with each other, and like thinking that we kind of have a direction we want to go, but then hearing other people, I'm like, oh, well, that's a really good idea. And just, like I said, having that, but also having the community of like our kids knowing our friends, and being able to, as they get older, when they might not want to listen to us, listening to our friends, because they think they're cooler or whatever. But just having like kind of, in a sense, raising our kids together, even though obviously we're each our own parents, but having that community to not only get ideas from, but also to lean on whenever we need. Maybe I need one of my friends to talk to my kid for me because I know they'll receive it better from them, or whatever it may look like.
Mm-hmm. I think even like one of the cool pictures of first century parenting is that they all lived within a tight-knit community with one another. And so one family might have like they may be like skilled laborers or craftsmen, and they may be able to make something, or make a chair and a table to eat dinner on, or something like that. And then another family may have a wine press, and so they may have a lot more money because they're selling their wine in their community. And maybe even a third family that they have a lot of kids, and they don't have nearly as much money, but they have a lot more time and can care for children and help watch children. And so they would all come together, and each family, they would share the skills that they've developed. And so they may be like, hey Bob, can you teach my kid, it probably wasn't named Bob, but hey Bob, can you teach my kid how to make a chair, and teach them how to be a skilled laborer and craftsman so that they can learn and that they can help provide for our family. And while you're doing that, I'll watch your kids as well. And then they maybe go over to another friend and say, hey, I know you guys have been blessed by God with your wine press and are very successful. Or maybe it's the owner of the wine press who goes to someone else and says, hey, we've been blessed by God and we're very successful, and we want to bless your family. Hey, can you come on vacation with us to Jerusalem, and we'll pay for us, and you can,
It sounds funny.
And yeah, it does sound a little funny, but just that dynamic in the first century was so much recognizing the skills and the abilities and the resources of other families and tapping into that. And so like modern day, I think of like, what is it that my family has that I can share with the families around me? And not only just give them like not even just like a gift or like a monetary thing or like a something that is nice to have but not really life-giving, but instead of like what can I provide to the people around me that is going to maybe give their children opportunity to see a new perspective of the world and of life that they could grow into and learn to love. And maybe God is putting on their heart for them to discover through me and a resource or an ability or a skill that I can share with other people, and God is going to use that in their lives. And so I just think about like, is it an ability to create something or make something or do something that I have that maybe when my friend's 14-year-old son is like, hey, I would really like to learn how to create a podcast and launch a podcast. And then I can step in and Brittany and I can step in and be like, hey, this is how you do it. This is what we did.
No, you.
And I don't know, we're on the 16th episode. We're recording the 16th episode right now. So maybe we have, maybe we only make it to 18 episodes. I don't know. Hopefully more than that. But being able to pass on this skill to someone else or to someone's children, and then being able to go to our friends and saying like, hey, our little girl really wants to learn how to ride a horse. Could you teach her how to ride a horse? Because that is definitely not a skill that I have. And so just viewing this community as like a pool of resources and skills and abundance that God has blessed us with, that we can turn around and share with our friends and the children of our friends out of love.
And also just developing those friendships with our friends' kids for our kids. I mean, like, if that makes sense. Like, we're developing that friendship with other parents and other people close to our age, and they all have kids, or a lot of them have kids. And so that at the same time that we're developing that friendship, just us hanging out is also forcing, in a way, our kids to also spend time together, especially at a younger age. So it's like allowing them the chance to foster friendship. And it's not to say that they're all going to become best friends just because we're friends with their parents, but they do know that they have each other. And if they're spending time together every week for years in a row, obviously they're going to develop some type of friendship, whether they become best friends or not. And it's just that like opportunity of, we know that our kids are hanging out with and getting to know other kids that are also being raised in a similar manner, or that are also being raised at least to like know and trust Jesus, and just praying for and hoping that friendship is pointing them to Christ even as young kids, and just giving them that opportunity to form those friendships with other kids their age. And I think we've already mentioned this several times, but community also just really opens the door to be able to walk with each other in prayer. And I think that knowing that we can reach out to a handful of friends at any time of the day, not that they'll always be awake, but honestly, a lot of them have newborns right now, so probably in the middle of the night they would be awake at some point. But reach out to them, and knowing that we are dealing with something, or we're praying about something. Can you pray for this with us? Can you pray about this with us? And knowing that they are going to do that, and then vice versa, knowing that we can pray over our friends and with our friends when they're in times of struggle. I think we both believe that there's a whole lot of power in prayer, and there's a lot of power in prayer just between me and Nathan, period, but being able to extend that in the numbers of our friends and family, including them in that, and knowing that they're going to pray with us in that and support us in that, is like a huge almost like release of pressure in the moment, and also just a huge blessing to know that on our highs we have friends that are going to be supporting us, and in our lows we still have those same friends that are going to support us and try to pull us along and point us back to Jesus in that time too.
Yeah. And just that there's power in that prayer. There's power in it, and so just being able to seek that out in our friendships and in our community and in our marriage, it's just it just changes things, and we've seen that just at work in our own lives as well. We are so thankful for you guys and for everyone who listens, and just every week are just blown away by people who say, we've listened to the podcast and we're loving it, and we love listening to it. And, part of that is a little ego boost, and it's great. It's a little good encouragement for us to hear that. And we love hearing that. But I think also it's just a reflection that the things that God is putting on our hearts, he's doing it for a reason, and that he's the one who is getting all the glory and the praise and the honor, and we just love that that what he is leading us to is resonating with other people. And so just to seek after Jesus, to recognize what he is doing in our lives, and to just praise him and thank him for his goodness and his mercy and his grace in us and through us. So all that to say, we are thankful for all of you. If you have find this podcast helpful, or you enjoy listening to it, it would be so helpful if you would share it and give it a rating on whatever platform you're listening on. It would just help to spread it with friends and family and get the word out on the podcast, and we would really appreciate that. And if you ever want to connect with us, leave a comment on our Instagram. Follow us and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. So with that, thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys again next week. See ya.